Good morning. The record reflect we are back in session. Parties and counsel are present. All members of our jury and our alternates are present. Our witnesses back on the witness stand. And Ms. Rodriguez, you may continue your examination.
Thank you. So when we left off yesterday, at Jarvis, we were talking about a portion of the transcript and some parts of that transcript that you had referred to the defendant. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And specifically, we were talking about some things that you had said in terms of the defendant basically pissing everybody off that he was in contact with, right?
Yes.
And you indicated that that was taken out of context, right? Now, you also had an opportunity to speak with multiple detectives, including detectives from San Diego and from San Bernardino. Is that right?
Yes.
And at some point, you talked to them basically about the same topic. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And do you recall what you said to the detectives?
Yes.
What did you say to them?
That Chase has pissed people off.
And do you recall telling them anything else about the defendant and sort of his interactions with other people?
That he was financially irresponsible, that he was a great designer and he worked hard, and he tended to be more artistic and creative and not follow through with things on occasions, and that was part of the problem that we had in our relationship too.
Do you recall telling one of the detectives that you can ask any of his business partners that he gets involved with people and people will help him and things work out for a while and then he ends up pissing them off?
I was over-exaggerating, but yes, he has pissed people off.
And do you recall telling the detectives that he's going to get involved in something bad somewhere?
I felt like at some point, somebody, may take things that Chase did the wrong way and come after him, yes.
And do you recall telling him that he didn't care and he doesn't have any priorities?
I wouldn't say that he doesn't care completely.
My question to you, Madam, is do you recall telling the detectives that?
Your Honor, I object to interrupting the witness. Can I answer the question?
Yes.
And in fact, those are things that you actually said specifically to the defendant in that call, right?
To be brief about it, yes.
And that he had made a lot of people angry, right?
He made some people angry.
Sustained.
Now, when you say that it was taken out of context, what do you mean by that?
I meant that I have a long history with Chase, and I have built up frustrations with our relationship together, and I get angry and start spilling out and over-exaggerating things that happen, so.
So it's your testimony that this conversation between the two of you was an over-exaggeration?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, people would request to play the call. Request to publish to the jury. It's been marked as exhibit 94.
All right. We'll distribute we have copies of the transcript.
Yes, I
Your
have.
Honor, if it's a foundation that can relate as to time, what, jail visit last yesterday, so we just clarify the date when this occurred. Foundation.
I don't believe it's been referred to as a jail visit, Your Honor. This was a transcript from a call that occurred on October 11th of 2014 prior to the defendant's arrest.
She's saying this under oath, that she can't testify to it?
I'm assuming that they do lay a foundation by someone.
We can, yes.
So the court will allow it subject to the case on the offer of proof.
While they're handing that out, you were interviewed by the San Bernardino County detectives in October of 2014, is that right? Sorry, I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Yes,
And then you talked to the defendant the next day, right?
yes.
And again, a reminder when you're listening to the recording, the only thing that you can consider as evidence is what you can actually hear on the recording, unless someone else testifies that what's on the transcript actually was something that was said if you cannot hear it on the transcript. Also, again, remind you, don't take notes on the transcript, take the notes in your notebook, because we're going to collect the transcripts afterwards. Okay.
Yeah.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Better.
Good. Well,
Are you at work?
no.
What are you doing today?
Second,
What are you doing today?
I was helping with almost the kids a little bit. So y'all, what's your plans?
And she was gonna want me to come over, so I'm not sure what she'll do here.
Who?
I'll have to clean her house.
Well, if you're over there, I can play with them at the park and stuff.
Well, and the kids wanted to go see Alexander with their fun today.
Would you be going with them?
So maybe with them.
What time?
I don't know. It hadn't been planned out. And my son had soccer game this morning. But sometime after lunch.
So, why was it so miserable yesterday?
For hours.
Really?
Yeah. Making me think I was remembering things wrong. Usually is helping you, pretty much telling me that you did the murder and that, you know, I helped you in some way, shape, or form. And, just bringing evidence in, pictures and things,
Such as?
such as, you know, pictures of your white utility truck and pictures of the family, and pictures of us.
pictures of us had anything to do with it.
Pictures of us, or pictures of the kids, our kids.
Well, what's that got to do with anything about Joseph?
But trying to, they're saying, you know, if you go to jail, nobody's going to be taking care of your kids, well, and stuff like that, you know, like, look at, you want to, and they flip to a picture of my kids. Oh, you want them to be without a mother? And stuff like that. My name.
These fuckers. So what kind of questions were they asking?
Like what happened the night before Joseph disappeared. And then, well, when they brought his phone records, he said, well, that's not what happened. Chase wasn't home. And I was like, what? That's not possible. That's not what I remember. And they're like, well, here's the phone record. You know, you were trying to get hold of them. And at that, you know, at the time you said that you saw the phone ring.
I was trying to get hold of him.
No, I was trying to get a hold of you. They were showing the phone record from the night. Well, it had the date of the disappearance on the phone record. You were trying to get a hold of Chase for several hours. Look at, there's call after call after call. And he's not answering. And I was like, that can't be. That just can't be because he was home. Like, I remember. That was crazy. I thought I was going nuts.
Sorry.
It's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kept telling me, like, you have something to do with it. That you're going to be accused of the murders. And I just was like, this was not possible. It's not possible. I know Chase. It's not possible. He's got no reason to do this. There's no reason for him to do this. I'm like, one day somebody's going to come and probably shoot Chase to, you know, kill him. But for him to do this to somebody else, it doesn't make sense.
What else?
What else? What?
Well, that's what I asked him.
That's it. I mean, I still defended you. I still said that there was just no way. There's no way that you could have done it. And they kept saying that there was, and that your car was seen, that your truck was seen leaving Joseph's house on the night they disappeared. And so, yeah, as we were going back and forth, and I was just like, am I going crazy? Am I remembering things wrong? What the hell is happening? And that was pretty much it. When they couldn't convince me or get me to say that it didn't happen the way I said, because I know it happened. And I said maybe it happened on another day, and I'm like, I suppose it could have happened on another day, but I could have sworn it was on a Friday, and I could have sworn, you know, this is what happened. And when they couldn't get me to change my story, I guess that's when they kind of gave up. I mean, it was getting close to the time I had to pick up the kids anyways, and I was like, you know, I can't, like, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what you want me to say, but I can't. I don't know. So,
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well. You were a different kind of person. Probably would never happen. You could listen to me at some point in time and change the way you were.
Hmm.
But, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to find evidence to pin this on you, or what.
Well, obviously they're trying that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if this is a made-up story for me, you know?
If it's what?
I don't know if they were telling me, like, a made-up story for my benefit, you know, because I'm involved with you. And, you know, they're telling me all these things because it could involve me. And then, you know, they're saying, you're gonna lose everything you have. You're gonna lose your kids. You're gonna lose this. You know, they're trying to instill that fear so that you say something to cover your butt, or, you know, you say something to implicate the person they're looking for. I don't know. You know, just so I don't know. I don't know if they're seriously looking at pinning it on you, or if they're just looking to clear you. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have any evidence against you, and they just need, like, some kind of alibi or somebody to go, you know. I don't know. You know, I don't know. I was totally freaking messed up yesterday. I was messed up.
Sorry. Spending an awful lot of energy on me.
Huh?
They're spending an awful lot of energy on me, though.
Well, they're just trying to find out who did it. And I think they want to cover all their bases. And you don't know that they're spending an awful lot of energy on you. It's just that it made a lot of people angry at you. That's part of the problem. So if somebody's going to point fingers, they're going to point them at you because you pissed everybody off at some point in time.
I don't piss everybody off.
Like, who haven't you pissed off?
I haven't pissed everybody off.
Think about it.
Like who?
Chase, like everybody I can think that you've come into contact with. Customers, business associates, you piss everybody off because you end up walking away, you don't follow through, you don't finish. You piss a lot of people off. And that's what I told the detectives. I said that's what I couldn't take that chance with my family because you're too reckless. You don't think about the consequences of things. And I thought you were going to pick off the wrong person and they were going to come after you and or us. I said if anything, it would be Chase who'd be the one ended up dead. He's going to pick off the wrong person one day and he's going to end up dead. But for him to take somebody else out, that just doesn't make sense. He just doesn't care that much about anything or anyone.
Oh, thanks.
Well, it's the truth.
No, it's not.
You didn't care enough to keep your family together. You don't stop doing the bad things that you do. You don't think about the repercussions. You don't listen to other people when they're trying to tell you that you're not.
Jackson.
I'm sorry? Oh, someone needs a pen? Oh, okay.
Doing the right thing. I still believe in you. I mean, I still care about you, but you drove me crazy. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta feed the boy. He's hungry and he keeps bugging me.
Right. Talk to you later.
You wanna say hi?
Well, see you later, maybe.
Huh?
I'll see you later, maybe.
Right.
All right, the record reflect we've completed playing the telephone conversation.
In listening to that telephone conversation, you talked to the defendant about the events that happened as occurring on a Friday, right?
About then, yes.
Well, you said in your statement that we just played in the call that you could have sworn it was on a Friday, right?
Yes, I said that.
And so that's when you believed that the phone call came in from Joseph, right?
I didn't remember what day it was. It was the 4th. I didn't know if that was what day that was.
Okay, well, when you had the phone call with the defendant, you said you could have sworn it was a Friday, right?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a couple of pages from Exhibit 439. And do you recall the defendant's phone number at the time being 374-0102?
Yes.
And Joseph had a 949 number, right?
I believe so, yes.
I'm going to show you a couple of calls that occurred on January 28th from the defendant's phone record. Do you see those highlighted?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what time are those phone calls?
5:30 p.m., 8:17 p.m.
Is it helping to look at the screen in front of you?
Well, that's the right times, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And those phone calls show a zero time, right? Meaning that the call was never connected, right?
Yes.
Objection is the foundation.
Sustained, the last answer is stricken jury.
Okay. Well, you see the elapsed time there, right? If you look
Yes.
at the screen in front of you, it'll show it a
Yes.
little closer, and it says zero, right?
Yes.
Okay. And those, if you look at them, the calls on the top there indicate the originating number, right?
Yes.
And so those would be calls from Joseph to Chase, is that right?
Yes.
And so, looking looking at also on January 29th. You see another call there that's highlighted.
Yes.
And what time was that call at?
9:27 p.m.
And that again would be a phone call from Joseph to Chase, correct?
Yes.
And that also shows a 0 seizure time and 0 elapsed time, right?
Yes.
And when you were talking to the detectives about those phone calls, you in fact told them that it's possible that you might be mistaken, right?
I told them, well, they were trying to convince me that I was mistaken, yes.
Well, they went through some phone calls with you, right?
I don't know what phone calls they showed me, but the phone calls that they showed me showed just, I was repeatedly, my phone was trying to call Chase's phone repeatedly.
Okay, well, when you talked to one of the detectives, do you remember telling them that maybe it was a different night?
Eventually,
And that would be consistent with what you just observed in those other calls, right? That we just looked at on the screen? That there were phone calls that came in at night from Joseph to the defendant that were not answered.
I don't know that it necessarily,
Objection.
Overruled.
I don't think it necessarily means they weren't answered, they just didn't connect.
Well, if it didn't connect, it wouldn't show up on the phone records, right?
I,
Objection, foundation.
Sustained.
These calls show up on the phone records, right?
yes,
As a 0 time, right?
yes.
Is it possible that you were mistaken about the call on the night of the 4th?
I don't,
Overruled, answer.
I don't believe so.
Well, you've just seen an opportunity, or you had an opportunity to look at some other calls that occurred, right?
Right.
And it's your testimony today that you were not mistaken about that at all.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
And it's your testimony that you were not mistaken about that, right?
That I was not mistaken about the phone call on the 4th?
Correct.
That is correct.
Well, you had an opportunity to listen to your call where you talked to the defendant and you told him that you were sure it was a Friday, right?
I didn't say I was sure it was a Friday. I said I thought it was a,
To use your exact words, Ms. Jarvis, you specifically said, I could have sworn it was on a Friday. And I could have sworn, this is what happened. Those were your words, right?
yes,
And would it surprise you to learn that January 29th was a Friday, 1 week prior to the 4th?
okay,
And that's when we see that there was a call coming in to the defendant's phone
Your Honor.
from Joseph.
Your Honor, I object as a form of question. This is testimony, not a question.
Overruled.
And you've had an opportunity to look at a phone call that came in on the 29th from Joseph to the defendant with a 0 time, right?
yes,
And that was Friday at 9:27, right?
yes.
Now, one of the things that you talked about in your conversation with the defendant was that he had made a lot of people angry, right?
Yes,
And so he burned a lot of bridges in the past, right?
yes,
Business partners.
yes,
And he had been working with Joe for quite some time, right?
yes.
And Joe had actually bailed him out financially, hadn't he?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, were there times where Joe bailed out the defendant financially?
There were times Joe advanced Chase money if he needed to pay for something, but he always paid it back.
You're sure of that?
As far as I know, yes.
Were you aware of an email that Joe had sent to the defendant indicating that the defendant owed him approximately $42,000?
Objection, Your Honor, that's actually a McStay content foundation.
Stay in this Blacking Foundation.
Were you aware of an email that the defendant received from Joe detailing a dollar amount that was owed to Joe from the defendant?
No, I was not.
The defendant never talked to you about that?
No.
And would it be fair to say that the defendant probably wasn't very forthcoming with you on a lot of financial things?
Well, I knew about most of the financial things. I mean, that was a problem between us.
Well, at some point, the two of you had shared bank accounts, right?
Yes.
And then you stopped sharing a bank account, right?
Yes.
Why did you stop sharing a bank account?
Because quite frequently, the account was overdrawn and checks were bouncing and fees were adding up.
I'm going to show you, I had asked you about the email, I'm going to show you what Exhibit 419. And ask you if you recall ever having a discussion with the defendant about that email from Joseph.
Okay.
Did you ever have a conversation with the defendant? Because you just indicated that you knew about almost everything financially, right?
Yes.
And you two were still together on February 1st of 2010, right?
Right.
Did you ever have a discussion with the defendant about him owing Joseph $42,000?
No.
Now, back at the time when the defendant had his company, iDesign, you used QuickBooks software, right?
I don't know.
You don't recall signing in and having a QuickBooks account under your name?
No, I don't.
I'm going to put Exhibit 419 up on the overhead for you to look at, the email that we were just discussing. And that shows an email to Jason Merrick, right?
Yes.
And were you familiar with any of those projects that are listed on there? The Provencio project?
Provencio is familiar.
How is that familiar?
It was, well, it was going in a restaurant, and I think there was some problem that happened with payment on Provencio, and I think Joseph was going to be suing the restaurant over payment, and
Where did you get that information in terms of Joseph suing Provencio over a payment?
that was discussions I had with Chase
When did you have those discussions?
when the projects were happening.
Isn't it true that you actually had those discussions during a visit that you had with him?
We also discussed it during a visit, yes.
Through the glass, right?
Yes.
And that was when he told you that you needed to remember that project, right?
He didn't need to do that because I did remember that project.
I'm going to show you the transcript of the visit.
We know which one that is.
I'm going to
Can
ask
we see
that
it?
you read page 1.
Can we see which one it is?
I believe that we emailed this to you.
I understand. Let's see which one it is.
Sure, just a moment. I'm going to ask
Your Honor, I would ask to see it before she shows it to the
I'm
witness.
just gonna ask her to read that while I go get him a copy of it. Page 1, lines 19 to 27, and then on page 2, lines 1 through, actually you can just read all of page 2. So start at line 19, and then read through page 2. You finished?
Yes.
Okay. Does that refresh your recollection about the conversation that you had with the defendant regarding the Provencio?
Yes, I already remember this conversation.
Okay. And you didn't actually remember any of the details about it, right?
Actually, I did, and I can point out where it says in the transcript.
Well, let's go through a portion of that report, because your
Your Honor,
conversation
the
with...
witness can see the transcript and point out.
Let's go through that conversation, because the initial part of the conversation was that you were supposed to meet with Roger that day, right?
Right.
And so you met with the defendant that afternoon. This is Super Bowl Sunday of this year, right?
Yes.
And he talked to you about some stuff that you were supposed to testify about, right?
He mentioned stuff that might be coming up.
In fact, he specifically said maybe you should try to remember things like that. One of the things is Provencio, right?
Yes.
And then he also said he needs you to remember, he needed you to remember that, right?
Yes.
Because that's the only way that you were going to get a picture of that to the jury, right?
I don't believe those were his words.
Well, if you look at one of the transcripts that you
Okay.
have, line 26, do you see that?
Yes, I do see
And that's
that.
exactly what he said, isn't it? Sure. That's exactly what he said, isn't it?
According to the transcript, yes.
And then he actually talked to you some more about Provencio, right?
Yes.
And turning to the next page, he continued to tell you, after you said that you only remembered a little bit, he continued to tell you need to remember it because when you get on the stand, they're going to ask you, do you remember this waterfall? Yes. Those were his words to you, right?
Right.
And he told you that you've got to remember that, right?
Yes.
And then if you turn to page 3, you can look at the top of that and read the first 3 lines.
Okay.
Do you remember that part of the conversation where you
Yes.
said, I don't remember like the specific details?
Yes.
I remember you talking about not having been paid for that, but you didn't know anything else about the details of it, right?
Yes.
So isn't it true that when you met with the defendant, you went over the specifics of that? What you were supposed to testify about?
No.
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 Despite what we just saw in what we just testified to about what was in the transcript, that's not what was said?
Your Honor, objection, argument.
Sustained.
Well, if you can read lines 4 to
Of page 3?
of page 3.
Okay.
And in fact, isn't it true that the defendant told you that you didn't have to go into big details to just tell Raj, and Raj would lead you right through it?
Yes.
And how long did you meet with Raj?
For about 8 hours.
8 hours. Was that all on Sunday night?
Yes.
How many other times did you meet with him besides Sunday?
Once.
When was that?
Actually twice. Well, not Raj, but I've met with Chase's defense team 3 times altogether.
Okay, and when were those times?
once in 2000 and 2016, I believe. And then more recently, since the trial started, Super Bowl Sunday, and then again on 'Tuesday evening, this past Tuesday.
And on that visit that occurred on Super Bowl Sunday, was that in Mr. Moldy's office?
Yes, it was.
And was just the two of you there?
Yes,
And that lasted for over 8 hours?
yes,
Have you ever texted Mr. Moldy?
a couple times, yes.
Now, when you talked to the defendant, you didn't bring the kids with you on this particular occasion on Super Bowl Sunday, right?
No,
That was just the two of you talking about the case?
yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd ask to publish the actual telephone call between, or the visit and story between Ms. Jarvis and the defendant.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and take our morning recess this time, 15 minutes before we play this particular conversation. So, again, keep in mind the admonitions previously reviewed, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, and we'll see everyone back in about 15 minutes.